Good afternoon and welcome to IVMF's VetNet webinars. My name is Elvis Abdic. I am Post-Program Support Service Advisor here at IVMF. And today with me, I have Stefan. He's a franchising consultant for Francico, and he's going to talk to you today about franchising in a service industry business. Stefan, I'll pass to you to introduce yourself and I'll put up your PowerPoint.
Okay, Elvis, thank you again. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to our military military vets through VetNet, and thank you all for what you do for our country. I look forward to walking in the next 30 minutes through some franchisors that are in service-based industry types. So Elvis, if we could put up the presentation, that would be great. Okay, bear with us 1 second, guys. Elvis is putting it up. What you're going to see on the first slide will be an agenda slide. So if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great, Elvis. So the first few minutes, I want to go ahead and explain myself and give you a feeling for who it is that you're hearing from today. I'll talk about 5 primary candidate motivations that when I connect with a candidate, that one of 5 reasons is typically why we're talking. And I'll give you ideas of those and specifically which one of them is directly pertinent to you as exiting military vets. I'm going to talk about what I call the 4 quadrants of franchising. We're going to specifically focus on 2, which are service-based. And I'm going to give you 10 different types of service industry examples with going over the industry size, key features, and differentiation points, just to kind of give you a feel for what's out there. And last but not least, you'll have my contact information. This is, I think, the 3rd webinar that I've done for VetNet. And again, it's always a privilege to speak with our vets. And I don't believe I said this, but military vets statistically outperform non-military vets. And I get asked this all the time, why? And it's because you understand how to follow standard operating procedure. So statistically, that transfers directly over to business ownership. So let's dive into who I am, and let me properly introduce myself, Elvis, at this time. You're going to see from an educational standpoint, I did my undergrad at the University of Texas. I had a double major in business and finance, in management and finance in 1990. I then went on to do my MBA at the University of Southern California, in entrepreneurial ventures. So I'm actually practicing what I'm preaching today. Last year, I was featured as a distinguished alumni in our quarterly alumni magazine at USC, which I'm very proud to be able to say. On the family side, my daughter, Sydney, is a sophomore cellist at the Cleveland Institute of Music. My son is pursuing a musical career as opposed to the college route. And you can see he's an avid fisherman. My daughter, Christy, is the director of counseling and psychological services for KDISD. She has about 160 counselors and registers that report to her. My career background has started with oil and gas, with Mobil Oil, where I spent my first 6 years in progressive franchising responsibility. Then I went over and spent quite a bit of time in the restaurant business. At one stage in my career, I ran a bunch of company-operated restaurants for Jack in the Box, and then was involved in the strategy team that converted the company-operated to franchise businesses within Jack. I spent some time with TGI Fridays as the international financial manager, where I oversaw global financial reporting for 150 restaurants in 41 countries. And I managed strategic planning for Fridays. And then my last corporate role was vice president of sales for Papa Murphy's Take and Bake Pizza, by far the world's largest take and bake. And one of the last deals that I helped put together with them was a significant deal in Dubai, UAE. So from a career standpoint, the far bulk of my professional career was in high-level franchising responsibility roles. It was in January 2012 that I became a franchise consultant with FranChoice. And for those last 7.5 years, I've been helping people all over the country and all over the world take a serious look at franchising. And I do it, and I am nationally published as doing this through an education-based approach. This is all about following an education sequential-based approach to make sure that what we're targeting maximizes the probability of success. Additionally, My wife and I are proud owners of one of the franchisors that I represent, Sola Salon Studios, where for the last 3.5 years, we've been top farming franchisees within that system. So the process that I'm about to roll out to you is the exact same process that my wife and I went through, and the exact same process that everyone that I've helped over the last 7 years has gone through. Elvis, let's go to the next slide and dive into this a bit. I always ask, why are we talking today when a candidate reaches out to me? And these are some of the primary reasons. Corporate downsizing. The corporate world's different than it used to be. People get taken out with the snap of a finger. Diversification. One of the reasons why we bought and diversified into our Sola was that we didn't want to have all our eggs in one basket, so to speak. So, we've got money in the stock market, the bond market, CDs, et cetera, real estate. But what we also wanted to do was be able to get into something that we had the ability to control our own destiny. And if we succeeded, great. We succeeded because we did a great job. And if we didn't, we failed because we didn't. And we had to ultimately look at ourselves in the end of the day in the mirror and say, okay. Needless to say, it's been a really good opportunity for us. We thoroughly enjoy running and owning our own business. E2 and EB5 immigration visas. I help quite a few people across the world in E2 reciprocal treaty countries that are able to come in and invest money in a franchise and live over here for either a permanent or non-permanent residency, depending on the visa type. Legacy. I hear this all the time. I want to do something to pass on to my kids. And then last but not least, change. And that's really where the bulk of people on this webinar fit in. You've had a career with our military, you've proudly served, and now it's time to figure out what you want to do next. So change. So, do you go down the corporate path? Do you renew in the military? Or do you possibly utilize the skill set that you've learned and the ability to follow standard operating procedure and invest in a business, and in this case, a franchise? So those are the different types of motivations. Elvis, let's look at the next slide, which I call the 4 quadrants of franchising. There are statistically about 3,000 franchisors in the United States, and within those 3,000, I represent about 150 under the franchise umbrella. It's a good cross-section of retail, brick and mortar, and service-based that can either be home-based or light industrial suite. The top 2 are retail, brick and mortar, where the differentiator is an investment of less than $250K or more than $250K. The focus today, in the last webinar that I did for VetNet last month, that's what we talked about, differences in retail. So if you want that webinar, feel free to circle back with Elvis, and he can go and explain it to you. Elvis, I just lost the slide. There you go. Okay, I got it. If you can go back, it's okay. I'm sorry. On the service side, the purpose today is to talk about 10 different industry types that can either be B2C, i.e. targeting a homeowner, and or B2B, targeting a business owner. There can be crossover there as well. So my objective in the next 10, 15 minutes is to give you 10 different industry examples without listing the specific concepts that I represent, just to give you an overview of the different types of opportunities that are out there. So let's start with the first one, because when everybody sees the picture, everybody knows what this is, because everybody's been bit by one of these before. Mosquitoes have been around since the dinosaur age. And one thing that you'll learn about this industry is that it's super fragmented. There's really no clear industry leader or brand preference. And the industry is ripe right now for disruption. The size of the industry is, $8.5 billion. It's growing. Certain key features here are it's membership based. It's recurring revenue, to where the service is provided on a consistent basis, which produces recurring revenue, in a flexible schedule. In terms of the actual homeowner, doesn't even need to be home to get service, because the service is provided based on the exterior of the home. Differentiation points that within the inventory, the concept I represent has an in-house call center that sells under the 50-year-old proven parent brand that has proven marketing system. So when a customer calls in and they say, hey, we're interested in looking at the service, the in-house call center is actually selling and signing that customer up for the franchisee. Okay, let's look at a second example. Senior care. 10,000 baby boomers a day turning 65. people are living significantly longer, which is creating just a tremendous demand for this type of business. And what we've seen is somewhat of a shift from traditional senior care, where you have non-medical home care, where a caregiver goes in and stays with that homeowner, where they don't have to transition to a assisted living house. In that case, in order to build a big business, you're going to be managing a bunch of different caregivers. What we're seeing is a shift in the industry as well, to one that parallels more what eHarmony does, which is, by the way, how I met my wife, Christy. They're matching a candidate with the right place to live, whether it's an assisted living, an independent living, a nursing home, a residential board, memory care community, etc. And they're essentially just a placement agency. The industry size is huge, billions and billions of dollars. You're going to see that in that case, it's a high transactional referral fee. You're making a huge, meaningful contribution because you're getting that senior or that disabled into a well-matched and well-placed facility that's been pre-screened in a small staff. And in fact, you don't even have to have an employee. You can do this on your own. Differentiation point, numerous national accounts that are in place with the franchisor that I represent here in senior care. Okay, let's look at the next one. Remediation. We live in Houston, Texas. And 2 years ago, Houston got decimated. And Elvis, if we can go to the next slide, that would be great. For remediation, Houston got decimated by the hurricane. And to say that immense opportunity was created based on the flooding and the mold and just the damage that happened in Houston would be a significant understatement. This is a gigantic industry. And with what we've seen in volatile weather patterns the last several years, this industry only continues to get bigger and bigger. It's recession resistant. If somebody's house floods, they have to get it handled as soon as possible. It's Amazon proof. The internet's never going to displace the need for this type of service. And the transaction average on average is significant. A differentiation point, the parent company that in our inventory is the world leader. And what they're doing is they are driving incremental business immediately out of training to the franchisees centered around national disaster projects and insurance referrals. Okay, let's look at the next one, Elvis. Well, you talk about another gargantuan industry, IT support, $300 billion plus industry. The franchisor with our inventory prides themselves on having a very collaborative culture with a franchise-specific coach for the first 2 years. Again, just to maximize the probability of success for that franchisee. You know, that franchisee has the ability to generate recurring revenue. They're focusing solely on a B2B space. And again, this is something that initially can be home-based. You know, differentiation points, the marketing team develops customized lead generation for the franchisee with heavy emphasis on product development to remain up to date with current IT systems and platforms. Okay, let's look at another example of a service industry. Talk about a big one, it's over $100 billion. Flooring is highly fragmented with normally a very poor retail buying experience with lower quality options that oftentimes leads the buyer, more often than not, the lady of the house, feeling very uncomfortable. The concept within our inventory is taking an Amazon approach. It is customer service where the showroom is physically brought to the customer's home with high-end flooring to where on the spot, they're able to pick the type of flooring they want. They're able to see what it looks like in their living room or bedroom, and they're able to get an estimate on the spot. Fast scalability, high transaction average, and flexible work schedule. And again, outstanding franchisor support. All right, let's look at a different industry. New mover marketing. Company in our inventory, 45 years old. And what you're going to learn is redemption rates and what they're doing are just significantly stronger than standard direct mail, which is becoming more and more obsolete. What they're doing is they're targeting new movers as they move into a market in creating awareness around certain services and products that are within that market. The industry size is $11 billion and growing. It produces recurring revenue. This is another business model where no employees are needed and very little to no overhead because it's home-based. The corporate call center assists in actually setting up appointments for the franchisee, just helping drive the conversions on that side. Okay, let's look at the next one. Wow, another giant industry. This can be both home and business to business. $56+ billion. The concept within our inventory is a national call center operating 24/7, 365 to introduce and to set appointments for the franchisees. They have an integrated partnership to drive the leads, the customers, and even to identify the top painting crews in the market based on strategic relationships with the 3 largest national paint vendors. This is no nights, no weekends or holidays. B2B and B2C with high transaction average. And again, large national B2B accounts that help drive check average right out of the gate. Next one, Handyman. Another huge business, $300 billion. You talk about how big the target is. It's anyone responsible for maintenance of their home, condo, apartment, or their business. It's literally everybody. This is something that has very low overhead, high repeat referral business with little to no accounts receivable. Differentiation, recruiting portal to find the best craftsmen. They have identified through technology the way to identify the best craftsmen in the franchisee's local market, and they help to retain and recruit them. All right, let's look at the next industry. I couldn't even quantify how big it was, so I said it's big. There are 14 million investors who own 43 million single-family rentals in the United States. The company, our inventory, is the industry leader, mature, dominant. They manage properties more efficiently through the use of technology and automation. Benefits here, predictable recurring revenue, recession resistant, and in an industry that's exploding based on the math that I just gave you. Large platforms showing an investor a holistic view of their properties. So again, through technology and automation, they're able to do things that other competitors just don't have the ability to do. Next one, and the last one, as a 10th example of a service-based business coaching. The franchisor we represent is the #1 ranked business service franchise. And what you'd learn about that is they have a lot of happy franchisees. The industry size is $7.5 billion. It is white collar, owner operator, recurring revenue with the opportunity for multiple income streams. Last but not least, one of the things that they're the most proud of is their franchisees come on board and they stay. Very, very low turnover rates. So again, another just stellar concept. Last but not least, should anyone need to reach out to me and need my personal, and if we can go to the last slide, Elvis, my personal information is right there. That's my cell phone, so feel free to send me a text, give me a ring. If you email me and you don't hear from me within the next business day, please follow up with a call or a cell phone because you might have got spammed, and I'll be happy to set an introductory call up. Last but not least, again, thank you for what you do for our country. And with that said, let me transition over to Elvis to see if we have some questions that I might be able to.
Thank you, Stefan. It was a great presentation. Let's go to our live audience and see if anybody has any questions.
Okay.
So, just getting here my.
Sure.
I'll give guys a few minutes to see if anybody has any questions. But if not, I do have a question for you, Stefan.
Sure. Sure.
And my question for you is, what is a typical investment for someone to get into a service-based franchise business?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is it's going to depend. It's going to depend on what the business model in and what the industry the franchisor is in. On the service side, because it's either home-based or light industrial suite, by definition, you don't have the higher investment costs that a retail brick and mortar facility would have. So starting within our inventory, we have concepts that you're able to get into in the high 50K range, many of them in the 100K range, give or take. And then conversely, you have certain getting significant territory with capital intensive equipment where the investment might be $3, $4, even $500,000. But the bulk of them you can get into at or around 100 grand. That's a great question, Elvis. Thank you. What's your next one?
My next question for you is, do you have funding alternatives for honorably discharged veterans?
Oh, that's another great question. Okay, funding. Yes. To answer that question, we have 4 national funding partners within our inventory that each specialize in helping people get into business. Honorably discharged military vets, as a general rule within our concepts, there would probably be a discountable local franchise fee based on the documentation of the honorable discharge. Additionally, our funding partners would work directly with the candidate to determine the best possible alternative, whether it's a IRA rollover, an SBA funding deal, a third-party bank lending opportunity. It would just specifically depend upon the candidate, their credit history, the size of investment they're trying to make, et cetera. And our funding partners do a great job, free of service up front, to help the candidates assess that. It's another great question. Yeah. Any other ones?
So we have a question from our online participants, and
Sure.
he says, hello, I am military spouse stationed in Germany. Do we have to research the franchise under any one of the industries that you have provided, or you want each of us to contact you directly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Elvis, for this particular person, what you could do is email them the first webinar that we did, which was really over the whole process of how this goes. I did not have the time to put that slide in, but long story short, if you would like to email me or text me, what I'll do is I'll set an introductory call up, and I can even email you that webinar, which is fine. It's all about taking the candidate through a process, which in my case starts with the introductory call so I can get to know the candidate, which enables me to send out the questionnaire, which is about a 15-minute automated exercise, which begins to touch on the key characteristics and possible industries that candidate is interested in. That leads to the most important piece of the puzzle, is the 45-minute phone consultation, which if you're overseas, we can schedule via Skype or, different other webinar technology. Or if you're, domestic, we can do it over the phone. And in that consultation, I'm asking you a series of questions, which enables me to write the model for that candidate, which I email the following day. Once the candidate validates the accuracy of the model, that's when we begin to focus on, is it service-based or is it retail-based? And if it's service-based, that's when we begin to identify the possible industries that candidate would have transferable skill set to. So in this particular case, to answer your question, in the introductory call, this candidate could explain to me, hey, this is kind of what industry I'm interested in, this is why. And then that would lay the framework for me to begin to help them and, again, work through the process to identify, first of all, is that target industry the right one for them? Is their model consistent with the franchisor's business model? Are they financially qualified based on minimum net worth and liquidity requirement? And is it geographically available in that target market? So those are all answers to the question that our person has asked us. Next one, Elvis.
Thank you, Stefan. My next question for you is, do some of your franchisors discount the franchisee fee for the vets?
Yeah. And if I didn't say that, my bad. As a general rule of thumb, franchisors, again, because statistically, veterans outperform non-military vets based on what we've explained already. And as an incentive for honorably discharged vets, there will oftentimes be a discount on the franchise fee that would be stated in the franchise disclosure document. That discount would vary. It would be specifically dependent upon each franchisor, But yes, as a general rule of thumb, as long as the candidate is able to provide their honorably discharged paperwork, they would be eligible for that discount on that franchise fee. That's another great question.
If anyone else has any questions out there on a YouTube live, please put them in your chat box and I will ask Stefan. If not, this video is being recorded and all of you will receive a recorded link shortly after this webinar with a short survey to see how we did and what other webinars you would like to see in future. So please stay tuned as we have August 22nd, we have Stars and Stripes Financial Literacy webinar on accessing the capital. And then August 29th, we have a LinkedIn, and they're going to do a webinar on military spouses and caregivers. So we have another question. Are your best franchisors charging ongoing royalty fees based on monthly gross revenues as well as upfront costs?
That's a great question. Okay, so the answer to that question is it's going to depend. In the introductory webinar that I can send out or Elvis can send out, we talk about the importance of the franchise disclosure document, which is annually published by the franchisor. To answer your specific questions, in the item 5 would be where the franchise fee would be found. The franchise fee is payable upfront when the franchise agreement is executed, and it would be wire transferred into the franchisor to where the franchise agreement can be countersigned by the franchisor. A franchise fee is payable upfront one time. That will be found in the item 5 under franchise fee. The item 6 is royalties, or other fees rather. And typically the first other fee cited is royalties, which would specifically lay out how they're charged. They could be a monthly fixed fee. They could be a percentage of gross revenue. It completely depends upon that specific franchisor in terms of how those fees are laid out. And within our inventory, the franchise fees, the royalties aren't negotiable. But to answer your question, the item 5 is where the franchise fee one time would be found, and where the item 6, the other fee royalty, would be found. That's a great question.
Thank you, Stefan. And I did insert the link in the YouTube chat of our first webinar with Stefan on how to make educated guess on deciding on which franchise is best for you. So
great, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, if you don't have any questions, thank you very much for being tuned in. And if you do get any questions later on, just send me an email to ivmfalumni@syr.edu or reach out to Stefan directly, and he'll be gladly happy to help you out.
Elvis, thank you again for allowing me to participate. And one more time, thank you to our veterans for what they do for us. Take care. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll look forward to our next webinar.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.